Okay, let's let everybody in. Welcome, everybody. We are a few minutes before we officially start. So, as usual, if you've joined an MZN webinar before, we have a little tradition here. We're trying to cover being fully inclusive, geographically inclusive, and try to cover all the countries and most, at least continents, as we can in what is usually a fairly sizable gathering. Now it's the summer, at least in the Northern Globe, and therefore there might be some few people off. But I would love it if you put in the chat where you're dialing in from, and I'll make a start. As usual, Janet is from Cape Town. I'm in Cape Town next week. And I'm dialing in from a very sunny Hamburg. Jasmine is from Kenya, so I think Africa is taking the lead here. In the meantime, I'll start sharing the first slide, and Better Girl Tony, and I'd be grateful if you let me know if you can see what I see. Ethiopia. Hello, Daniel. There. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Oops. No, I switched over. And this is the slide switch. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so that works. The problem with this is now I can't see any of the other tools, not the chat, not the questions, nothing. Oh, no, I can.
You can? Okay.
Esra from YMCA South Sudan. Everybody seems to be from Africa, which is good. Give it a few more minutes. In the meantime, whilst we are waiting for the start time, we may as well acknowledge two pieces of news up front. If you follow our LinkedIn carefully, that of our sister company, our private sister company, Human Planet, we have today announced a global partnership with Chemonics, a global development partner, particularly to access more funding in the Gulf region. So if that is of interest to you, GCF funding, then that should give us a better base to collaborate. And I'm really welcoming our friends and colleagues from Chemonics to our work here. And then finally, also on the 14th of May, you may have seen that we've launched grantwire.org. We'll refer to it in this conversation. I think there's now a few hundred signups already. It's completely free, a way to search for funding, and you are more than welcome to try it out. Meanwhile, Alessio joins in from Mozambique, Nairobi. I think it's going to be an all-African team today. I like it. Tony, I can't see the time because my screen is completely taken by the slides. Will you let me know when we are supposed to start?
We are supposed to start right now.
Oh, let's do it. Okay.
2:01.
Perfect. Marlene, finally from Copenhagen. I'm from Hamburg. There's one European here. Fantastic. Hi, Vedan from Sudan. Welcome, everybody, to the second quarterly funding briefing and a bit of a donor update of MZN International. I'm joined here today by my fantastic colleagues, Tony Ann Robinson-Beck and Bettegül Osman. We are, as usual, doing this fairly quick, pacey mini update, not to provide a update about individual grants or individual RFQs, but in order to give you a bit of a general update about what's happening. We are looking here today at what's happening with the contraction of ODA in general. Hopefully there won't be too much news there for you. If it is, it's going to make for a very depressing start. And then my colleagues are looking into a few noteworthy developments at some noteworthy foundations and donors. And then we complete with what we can do about all that. The aim here is to provide a quick snapshot of where funding and the donors sit within the space of about half an hour. So obviously we can't dive into the major big developments that are happening at the EU for the strategy redraft or at the Gates Foundation, what's behind it, though my colleague will briefly comment on that. So we really want to stay at a sort of higher level so that you all walk away with an appreciation of where the money is moving to during this quarter and what this means for your organization. The real meat, the real joy of these webinars is in the interaction, not in the presentation. So we are always aiming to finish the presentation part within, what do you think, Tony Ann? 25 minutes, half an hour max?
Yeah.
So we go through it at a fair pace so that we can get to the questions. So please use this time to ask my colleagues here and my colleagues around the world who are really donor experts, funding experts, to ask about your particular situation, if you can publicly discuss this, and to share your views. And please use the Q&A, not the comments section. To preempt a question we're always getting, yes, this webinar will be recorded, and yes, it will be sent out. We usually get way more engagement from the recording than we do from the live webinar. That is perfectly fine. Where we do not get down to all the questions in the allotted time, we will email you our take on it, our answer as far as we can, so that no question goes unanswered. So fire away, and let's try to make this as useful as we can. Good. Very brief introductions for those who don't know me. My name is Chris. I'm the founder and managing director of Amsterdam International. Amsterdam International, of course, is a non-profit for non-profits. We are working since 2011 now. It's getting very old now. Exclusively with non-profit organizations. This is not to be confused with our also very close sister company, Human Planet, which is our private sector vehicle looking at impact investments, and the teams are completely unified here. I myself worked in NGOs for close to 20 years now, coming from the private sector, and both of my colleagues who introduce themselves, both of them have significant funding and donor, UN, NGO experience as well. Moving from left to right, Tony Ann, do you want to say hello?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us here today. As Chris mentioned, and as you can see on the screen, my name is Tony Ann. I am a manager at MZN International, and I spend most of my time working with different NGOs of varying sizes. So I'm very familiar with the ins and outs of work across the development space. My background, I've been working in the space for about 9 years now, and the bulk of my experience is with the UN. So thanks so much for joining us today, and I look forward to engaging with you later on in the session.
Hello, everyone. This is Betty Gül, and thank you for joining us today. I work as a consultant at MZN, and what I do is I do pipeline analysis or market analysis. I connect donors with NGOs, and all my 15 years of work have been both. I've been a part of different NGOs, but also I worked in the private sector to connect them to NGOs as well. So thank you for joining, and I hope it will be beneficial for you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, dear colleagues. Okay, let's get started. So here's what we're looking at today. Q2 has really reshaped the donor landscape once again, and most of our NGO partners, we work with around 300 of them every year in a partnership model, haven't really absorbed the change yet. So the next hour here is asked for to build conscience and awareness that we can close that gap. Now, we're going to talk briefly about where the donors are placing their money. So my colleagues will have specific updates on Gates, Co-Impact, Laws, EU Innovation Streams, UN, and some multilateral climate funds. We're then moving on, which we'll also cover, which from innovation and transformation streams are now open. Here we have some good news, what is being funded, what is closed, and which thematic areas deserve attention in the coming up quarter, here the Q3. And we are then finally trying to translate all that into what this means for your organization. How do we act on it? So not just a nice admiration of the problem, but actually some stuff we can do about it. And fortunately, we can always do something about this. Moving straight into the background, the funding environment is in the same direction and shifting even faster over the last 3 months. It just outpaces, for most of our NGO partners, it outpaces the speed with which they can develop. We're having an overall 23.1, so 23%, near quarter reduction of development over last year. The final figures are still coming out, but it looks to be directionally in a quarter, which means we are now basically at the level we were at 10 years ago. In real terms, when you take inflation out of it, we have the same ODA levels, overseas development aid levels, that we had when the 2030 agenda was adopted. So a decade of funding growth, in grant funding growth, I should specify, has been reversed. That's bad news. The major majority of the donors have really also reduced their aid. 26 of 33 have included Germany, as you saw in our recent newsletter from yesterday, has cut down aid by nearly 50%, the United States by nearly 50%. France is going that way as well. The good news is that whilst they're cutting down grant funding, they are increasing other forms of funding, which, however, most NGOs aren't set up for. So here is the good news, bad news situation. And then the notable exemption to the trend is the Gates Foundation, which my colleague will cover in a second. So overall, public grant-based aid is really continuing to contract. ESG, philanthropic, and climate capital, they can sort of catch this drop in grants to a certain extent, but the problem is that ESG, impact investments, and philanthropic venture capital is not your straightforward grants. It has very different dynamics to it, different legalities to it, different infrastructure, reporting mechanisms to it, that those NGOs who take their mission seriously and want to continue growing to serve those why we are all getting up for in the morning, those people and the planet we need to help more, they really need to adapt to this new type of funding. Which means that that we need to talk through some of these changes overall. With ESG, it's worthwhile noticing, it's not on the slide here, I mean particular corporate ESG. Corporate ESG it has a bad rap. But it is re-engaging, and it's re-engaging in my perspective with a new degree of rigor and honesty, where impact measurements and standardization of these impact measures is more and more standardized and not project specific. So the idea is we fund an organization and we analyze their impact across the portfolio of the project that the impact delivery organization, be it an NGO or a social enterprise, is delivering. And that's good news, because that means we are coming out of the potential, at least, to come out of this phase where we do project by project reporting, where the overheads are probably closer to 30–40%, and we are doing more systematic reporting and systematic building of organizations and their capacities, where the per project overheads therefore reduce much more, meaning more money can go to where it really needs to go across development, aid, and climate. So that is what is happening here is a reshape. Not necessarily a contraction. If I had to explain it to someone who's new to the sector, I would say, hey, impact capital, or used to be just grants. It always used to be also philanthropy, venture philanthropy, ESG, impact investment, climate capital, and grants. And yes, the grant bucket is going lower. The other buckets are either staying or slightly increasing. but obviously we need to adjust to how to apply to each bucket. Now, let's get a bit more specific with my colleague who is looking at Gates. I think that's you, Tony Ann, is that right?
Yes, but first I can go through the Grantwire slide.
Yes, sorry, I forgot that.
Yes, no problem. So, as Chris mentioned before, we recently launched a free opportunities database called Grantwire. And it's basically a platform where you are able to, through a very brief onboarding process, you tell the system about your organization, where it's located, the thematic areas you focus on, if you have any budget specifications, any specific target groups, and the system takes that information and curates or finds and curates opportunities that matches those specifications that you would have outlined in the onboarding process. So we wanted to create a platform that reduces the amount of manual work it would take to find the opportunities and have these opportunities be delivered directly to your email address or on the platform. Grantwire is free forever. We will never charge for it. But we do have MZN services listed within the platform that you can choose if you so wish to. And these services focus mostly on proposal writing, proposal review, etc. As you can see here on the kind of like note at the bottom of the slide, you will see that the platform also provides you like a summary of the amount of grants that are there, which ones match best. And you can scroll through and see how these would apply. I think there's a next slide below that showing like the landing page. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
No problem. Yeah, so this is what the landing page looks like. At the top right, you'll have the ability to log in and sign up. And this page just shows you what the platform is supposed to do. So once you sign up, and you only can sign up with a corporate email address, then you fill out the onboarding process. Then it takes you directly to your My Grants page, and you'll be able to see all the grants that the AI bot would have found for you based on your responses during the onboarding. And then you can also see on a separate tab all the grants that Grantwire has. So that's Grantwire. If you have any questions, we can talk about it a bit more during the Q&A.
Sounds good. What I like about the system is that it learns your preferences upon voting likes and dislikes, right?
Yes, yes. So you have the ability to rank the opportunities. So if there's an opportunity that fits you, you can click like the thumbs up. If it doesn't fit you, you can click the thumbs down, and then it will remove similar opportunities from being delivered to your platform and to your email.
Let's move on to Gates.
Yes.
Here we go.
Alrighty, so this slide just basically encapsulates, I think, the news that you might have heard before. So Gates has recently endorsed a $9 billion US annual spend, sustained for the next 5 years. And this is nearly double what was endorsed, the year before in 2025 and in 2024. The good news is that when we take into consideration the sharp decline in ODA disbursements, this $9 billion per year can go a long way in kind of, plugging the gap a bit. Not to say that it could cover every single thing, but this goes a very long way into making sure that the entire space doesn't face a severe funding crisis. They're forecasted to deploy about 200 billion by 2045, and this 2045 deadline is very significant because the organization has mentioned that they will close at the end of 2045. So it's a time-capped support, but I think it's important to recognize that there's a 20-year period from which you could possibly get support, and we'll get into the priority areas in a bit. But as I mentioned before, it goes a long way in kind of covering and preventing what could be a potential complete fallout in the sector. Next slide, please.
Yes, sir.
All right, so when we talk about the 3 priority areas, so based on what was released by the CEO recently, they're focusing more across these 3 areas. So we have maternal, newborn child nutrition and health. We also have infectious diseases and poverty reduction. Once you look within each of these areas, you will see that the maternal and child health component is the strongest growth area in the 2025 portfolio, and it will be heavily focused on Africa and South Asia as well. For infectious diseases, it's a very varied collection of thematic focuses. So we have vaccines, neglected tropical diseases, pandemic preparedness, and yeah. There's a strong continued relationship with organizations such as the WHO, which will be able to carry out its mandate a little bit more comfortably by having this support from the foundation. And then when we look at poverty reduction, we'll see that they're tapping into a bit, agriculture, financial inclusion, gender equity, and economic mobility. So the areas under these 3 components are somewhat diverse. So I think it could apply for quite a few different NGOs and organizations. But one thing you should keep in mind is that most of the grants distributed by the Gates Foundation are done by invitation. So it's not necessarily the path of, seeing a bid, applying for it, and then being successful. And you'll see this kind of trend crop up in a few of the others that I will be discussing below. It's more about engaging with the organization, building relationships, kind of showing them, the compelling work that you're doing, how you're supporting different communities and benefiting them, and how this can be developed or grown or scaled in the near future.
Can I just add here that, when it comes to Gates, and there are other donors who work on invitation and shortlisting as well, what happens a lot within the MZN partners is that one partner wants to apply, hasn't really applied to, say, Gates or something similar before, and we partner them with another partner who has done before. But then there's like a pass-through, and Gates, and correct me if you think differently, Tony, but Gates is usually very receptive of that, right?
Yes. They are very receptive to consortia in a way, particularly when it's a diverse collection of organizations who meet their overall objectives, but they have different ways of implementing, or they focus on different thematic areas. And I think it's because it could be, the potential to cover a large area of issues or needs. And that the Gates Foundation can work with the organization to achieve that. So that's something you can also keep in mind.
Yeah, totally agreed.
Okay, next slide, please.
Here we go.
Thank you. All right, so this is Co-Impact. And Co-Impact, if you haven't heard of it before, it's basically a collection of different organizations who are working towards a variety of different goals under certain thematic areas such as health, education, economic development, etc. So it's a relatively new entrant in the systems change philanthropy, and their model is more about collaborative philanthropy. So they usually look at multi-year flexible grants. They prioritize locally grown or situated organizations in the Global South at the very center. Recently, they've mobilized around 870 million across 140 initiatives, and you can see the list of countries or continents that they focus on here. And recently, they have given around $40 million for maternal health partnerships and 30 million for refugee-led organizations partnerships. So similar to Gates, Co-Impact is not really the organization that you would submit an application to. It's more about building the relationships here and showcasing, what you're doing, why it's compelling, why it's good for the particular community or communities that you're working with, and showing them how this particular project or program has the potential to be scaled. So it can reach a wider cross-section of people, maybe in a different country or even in communities nearby to the ones that you're working with.
If you had to put it into one word, what's your impression of Co-Impact as a functioning donor?
I think the only word that comes to me is modern. And this is because it's not so focused on the traditional way of grant funding and doing things. So they, as I mentioned before, they're focused on, different consortia, pooling organizations together to achieve shared goals across different thematic areas, preferably. And they are one of those organizations that, look into a bit, other ways of financing. So it's not necessarily just grant-based financing, but they look at other formats as well. And I think it's a good representation of how the sector is moving forward and how NGOs should be able to adapt to take advantage of some of the great opportunities that are out there.
Interesting. Thank you.
No problem. I think the last slide is mine. Yep. Next slide.
There we go.
Thank you. All right. So these are some opportunities that we thought would be good for, you to learn about, particularly from the UN. At our previous session, we mentioned a bit kind of the issues that the entire agencies are going through. But these are just a few opportunities that we think could be good fits for the persons who would be interested. And one of the three are recurring, so you can check that out, maybe the next year. The current call is closed right now, but it happens every year. So the first one is the mental health and psychosocial support for UNICEF. That looks at the Maharashtra mental health in schools. This one is open till the end of the month, so you can check that out definitely. And it focuses mostly across South Asia and Africa. Then we have GBV response, reproductive health with UNFPA. And these are country-specific calls, mostly for technical assistance and system strengthening. This one is active, so you can check this one out as well. And then the final one is the UNEP Young Champions of the Earth opportunity. So this one has recently closed, but I think it's a viable opportunity because one, it's recurring every year. And two, it focuses on kind of cultivating the next generation to take environmental protection and issues a little bit more seriously. They get a stipend and they go to New York, I believe. So this is one that can definitely be, taken advantage of. It happens every year, so you can look out for the one next year. And overall, we see that even though the UN is kind of going through a very pressurized shift.
Nicely put.
Yeah. We see that they still have quite a bit of new focus and new capital, mostly looking at climate and resilience, finance, etc. So the agencies are adapting, they are changing. It might be a bit slow, but they see that they need to diversify how they approach funding, what they focus on. So you can definitely look, see which opportunities would be beneficial for you and learn how best you can prepare yourselves for that.
Can I just add here? Yes, we very rarely still, but we still sometimes do get requests for donor mapping, which used to be a thing we did regularly 5 years ago, right? And I just want to take the opportunity to the wider audience here to say that we don't really do donor mapping anymore because for two reasons. Number one is the donors are changing faster than we can map them. So manual donor mapping really is outdated within, what is it now, 2, 3, 4 months of sending a document, by which date most recipients of the donor map haven't even acted upon it. And number two, obviously, grantwire.org replaces that to a certain degree. You can get the AI to map the donors for you and keep you informed. And then last but not least, the reason we, over 10 years ago moved away from project-based consulting to real partnerships with everybody here in the room, with many of the organizations here and with our other partners, is because what you just said, Tony, and these funding opportunities come around every year. And or year on year, and some of them do, and then they move and they update. And we need to work together more long term in order to make funding more long term. So this is just two of the reasons that I keep repeating back to anybody who says, "Can we just, issue a 5 weeks donor map?"
Yeah.
Which is, yeah, we can, but why would we?
Yeah, in a few months, it's the donors' focus may be different. They maybe allocate more funding to this work stream. It's very dynamic. So yeah, it's more important to look at a longer term partnership.
Yeah, completely agreed. Unfortunately, our way of working is very much aligned with that. Cool. Let's move on.
Now it's time for some good news, actually. Some of the countries which were not stepping up are stepping up, and Italy is one of them. So they approved for 2026 1.7 billion, which is a significant opportunity for NGOs. And as mentioned by Tony-Ann, climate resilience, again, climate sustainable agriculture, climate adapted agriculture, food security are the areas which they focus the most, and they have some budget for Lebanon as well. So we see that OECD also recommends Italy to further increase the budget, which could signal that they could go up with the budget that they want to give out.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, climate resilience comes as a big focus area. But other than that, the second one is the humanitarian response. And as we always say, they look for local partners. And they look for consortiums. Of course, in some of them, Italian language is a must, where again comes the thing that you have to partner up with a local NGO. Also, other than Italy, I haven't mentioned it here, but Spain is also going up with their budget. And they could also be a good country to look for if you are looking at the grants and funding opportunities. But there as well, Spain and Spanish would be one requirement. So you would have to build a consortium with a Spanish local NGO. Yeah.
Again,
so next slide, please. Yeah.
Here we go, Germany.
Yeah, not always good news. Yeah. For Germany, funding, the competition goes up as they give fewer grants, and also although they still give grants, they also are involved in blended finance mechanisms. So BMZ confirmed 9.9 billion euros. However, humanitarian aid was halved. And also, this is a big number. I think 6.8 million people have lost access to German-funded support. And another development in the sector is that 17 major NGOs, they issued a public statement saying that these sustained cuts are worrying and they are impacted largely. So for May 2026, additional cuts are proposed for 2027. Yeah. So next slide, please.
Yeah, Germany is just one addition. The other donors, not on the slide here, KfW, European Investment Bank, also based in Frankfurt, etc. They really are heavily working with through impact finance, through reimbursable loans, returnable grants, in order to preserve the capital that they have, that they've got. So that, I think, is in line with the EU strategy that is forthcoming. and is one of the other buckets I've mentioned initially.
So when we look at the European Union, there are some opportunities where there is the EU Innovation Fund for technologies, energy area, Horizon Europe, where the call is open, Internal Security Fund, and EEA and Norway grants, they have also open calls, and Social Innovation Fund, which puts innovation more to the front, and it's also giving out some funding to social entrepreneurs as well. Yeah, next slide, please.
Here we go. Oops, sorry. There we go.
So there are new windows opening in 2026, which are about, again, climate. There's Green Climate Fund, and they both give for climate adaptation and climate mitigation. There is GEF, which is a big amount, $3.9 billion. And they again prioritize blended finance. So as we said before, not just grants are there, but there's a push towards the blended and innovative finance in the sector. And there's adaptation fund as well.
Absolutely.
Yes, next slide.
By the way, for the GEF,
Yeah.
you need to be pre-registered and pre-qualified. The accreditation process takes a long time, is a bit painful, but again, we work through a lot of partners, like that are accredited already, like our new partners, Chemonics, just announced today, for example, and other NGOs which we work with every week. So we often build consortia here.
And they usually work through agencies, which are UN, like UN Women, UN Climate part, and World Bank, or big ones like World Wildlife Fund.
That's very true. That's very true. Cool. So what we're seeing, what does this all end up with? We want to get to the questions. Please bear in mind, please put the questions into the Q&A section so we can get to them after the last few slides. Overall, how would we sum it up? I'd sum it up like this. There's a sort of a capital concentration. The fewer donors that there are, they're going deeper with fewer partners and more thematically narrowed. Gates makes this very explicit. Co-impact is pooling. Bilateral donors are cutting partner lists. They do this in order to cut down their overheads. Whilst they do that, and very often it's the larger organizations and historic partners that they're cutting down to, the local route is absolutely top. So you still need a very much thoroughly represented local partnership. I've seen a proposal just this week from an organization which had all the local partnerships, but didn't elevate them to page 1, page 2 of their proposal. So, the pressure to fund through locally led organizations is fairly consistent now across ESG, venture philanthropy, impact investments, and yes, grants. What is, I find, incredibly more important, again, Betty Gül, Tony, and disagree with me or add to this as you see fit, is that innovation and scalability is absolutely key. Basically, here are donors who try to who are aware that their funding is drying up, that they are doing significantly less disbursements, and they want that to go further. So they look at technology in particular to scale and to connect to other donors for programs, to historic programs, and to other initiatives locally. Tech is an absolute key here. Now with agentic AI, basically making the incremental cost of software development towards very low, there's a real chance for us to improve the scalability of programs, but obviously that means the program needs to be slightly differently presented or even managed. What shall we then do about all that? Well, there's probably three things, amongst others. What we're seeing most, and that what we are walking most partners through with, is the ones you see here on this slide. Number one, let's realize that the existing funding we have is probably way more exposed than we think. If you're an organization which receives 50 to 60% plus of its funding through in grants, and if that then concentrates on a few donors as well, then the next few years will really, really test you. So run the analysis now, see your donor exposure risk, and bear in mind that large changes are coming now after the shock of the last 18 months. The EU is changing massively. So run that exposure now and reach out if you need help to do this. We do a lot of this pro bono as well, frankly, these days, while you still have time to act and while you still have time to change. There's this famous saying, if you don't like change, I think you like irrelevance even less. So let's make sure we are changing in order to adapt. And not look at it from the rear. Local leadership, as I mentioned just now, is really no longer a soft factor. It really wasn't ever a soft factor, but it's even more important right now. And then what I just said about innovation. Some programs of work, attracting additional capital, complementary capital on top of the grant, called catalytic. That's no longer a nice to have. That's really a major advantage in any funding application. Cool. That's sort of there are many more, but if you had to go down to the top three, that's what we would leave it to. So here are three questions that I would leave you with to ask your team for the remainder of this and early next week. Where's our funder concentrating on? Where we mix, where we exposed? Are we really happy and confident that this funding continues for the next 3 years or 5 years? Then ask yourself, which two funders today cover our work tomorrow? Just two. Just, where the greatest strategic fit across all the funders that there are in the world, what you do and where you do it. And are these two donors in your funding portfolio? And if not, let's make those key accounts and work towards them. And the final question is sort of on what I would ask on innovation. Do we have an innovation policy? How do we employ tech? How do we work innovation through our local implementation agencies? What do we put in all our funding proposals? That's really, really essential, as I mentioned now a couple of times. Cool. So now we get to the Q&A. That's the part I value most, frankly. We're gonna push this one down here. There we go. Or this way? No, this one. So you can absolutely, let's have a look in the Q&A. I haven't done so already. If anybody of my colleagues has, then I will. But you can also submit questions by email. You see this email down here. And hopefully we will be able to get back to you fairly promptly. Just a few announcements before we do this. We do this funding webinar every quarter. I hope you find it useful. Oops, I'm sorry, this is way too fast. So the next one is in September. I'm getting out of the way. There we go, in September. And similar format, fresh perspective, new analysis of quarters. You can go to the website, MZN website right now. You can go to grantwire.org right now, sign up, and also, again, follow up with the questions over there. We will always remain a nonprofit social enterprise, and our mission really is to build better NGOs so that we can do good and do that better. So by all means, if you find any of this helpful, but you need a bit more energy, a bit more encouragement, a bit more of a contribution from an outside source in your thinking, reach out. We will get back to you, even if it sometimes takes us a few days. Thanks very much. Let's go into the questions. There we go. Where do I find the Q&A tool?
It's a little bit hidden. Okay.
Did you, Tony Ann, or you, Betty, have a chance to look at those? Which ones shall we do first?
Yes, so I had a chance to look at them. I answered a few, and Betty Boo answered a few as well.
Oh, cool.
The first one is from an anonymous attendee, and they're asking if we have any updates on the reshaping of funding from the US administration, because they've been hearing that the Department of State staff is rejoining some working groups in countries and starting to re-engage. So it would be good to know if we see more movement on funding and where it would be directed.
Yes. I spoke to our incoming US partner, Katie, and I would say that hold your hopes. It's not coming back. The US has withdrawn from the international development scene, and it will do so for the foreseeable future. From a government point of view, by the way. There are a few minor interesting headlines and announcement that they are funded UNICEF and I think one more organization this week with I think 17 million. But given the catastrophic withdrawal of near 90% of all their funding to UN and other agencies last year, this is really a drop on the stone. So if you are hoping for a re-engagement and a return of the USAID, it's not going to happen. Not now, not in the next few years. There is no strategy that is viable that hopes for that return. I am sure that from a political point of view, once the administration changes and becomes more open, and once they realize the damage they do to themselves in withdrawing from the stage, it'll still take them years to get anywhere close to where they were right now. Unless you have a funding reserves in your bank for the next 10 years, I would not put my hopes on the US. What is interesting, however, from the US point of view is that corporate ESG, impact investors, particularly on the climate side, Betty Gill, you and I were in the Climate Week, and when the US, it was a funny moment, right? When the government officials sort of announcing, yeah, we are no longer, funding development action or climate, and you need to not do that as well. The entire finance community in the room was like saying, no, we will continue doing that. We've built that for the last 15 years. We have our impact indicators. You, Washington, do what you think is right, we'll stay. So they don't necessarily follow their government here. That's the good news. And philanthropists are sort of very keen to save the most useful programs, and I think they're acting faster. That's my impression. Does that answer the question, Tonian?
I think you did a pretty good job. For the person who asked a question, if you still have any follow-ups, you can put them in the Q&A. Alrighty, so moving down a bit, so we have a question from James. He's asking if Chemonics is GCF accredited or GEF. I guess he means accredited.
A GCF.
Alrighty, so moving down to the next question.
Obviously, there are two different funds, right? One is the Green Climate Fund, just for everybody. The other one is the Global Environmental Facility.
Yeah.
It's much older, I think established in the 90s, early 90s. Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty, so the next question, I think I can take this one. From Wedad, they're asking about the 3 goals, I guess it's from the Gates Foundation, about their project in Sudan that focuses on local communities to reduce poverty as Sudan is facing a war crisis. What procedures must I implement? All right, so to start off, as I mentioned before, it's not enough to just reach out to Gates and say, I have this project, could you support me? It's a more targeted and systematic approach. You would have to firstly ensure that your project matches specifically to what they're looking for. You would have to craft your messaging when you're trying to pitch your project. If it does match what they're looking for, this is step two. You'd have to craft your project in a way that's compelling. You have to show that it's scalable. You have to show any past results that have been obtained before. Did you get any reductions in poverty or whatever objectives you're trying to reach? You have to demonstrate that as well. And most importantly, you must have patience because when you're interacting with these donors, it won't happen from one day to another. It's a um, systematic process of engaging. Sometimes you may hear no, sometimes you might not hear anything. You might have to change your approach. Maybe you don't reach out to one person, you reach out to another person. But it's more important to have the information ready. So, what's compelling about your project? What has it done before in terms of the objectives it has reached or impact that it has created? And to understand that once you're engaging with them, it might take some time. If you have any partners that have worked with them before, you can check your network to see if anyone has worked with them before. You can leverage that. But mostly it's about those three steps. Okay.
Completely agreed.
Yeah. If I didn't answer your question or you'd like to connect with me afterwards, my email is in the general chat. Yeah.
Cool.
Alrighty. So next question is from another anonymous attendee. So what has been the
I can
general...
take this, I think,
Okay,
if
can
you
you see
want.
it?
Yeah, I can
Okay,
see
cool.
it. So they're asking about the general experience for an NGO working with humanitarian and development aid if they apply to EU Horizon Call, which are not traditionally aimed at NGOs. My suggestion would be that although Horizon has a large budget, it's very attractive since it's more aimed at research. Universities are the ones which get it most of the time. If you're an NGO which has a research department, you could compete with them. But if not, maybe you could do a consortium with them and you do the local analysis or you do the field work. But I would not advise you to apply if you don't have a research background and so like you wouldn't be so competitive among the universities.
Yeah, and to add to that a bit, Horizon tends to treat preferentially organizations based in the EU. So that could be, something that could affect your application. Even though they say that they focus on third world countries, they do prefer organizations in the EU. So it would make sense to, collaborate with an organization based in the EU and see how that increases your chances. Note though that the application process can be very tedious. So you have to take that into consideration as well.
Yeah.
And I think their reporting processes can be a little bit tricky as well. So you just have to weigh if this is a good option for you. If you have a partner in the EU who could take the application forward, then you just have to consider the application and the reporting process.
Oh, Tony, and you're making us so much look forward to this application and getting the grant. I mean, what you're saying basically is a complicated process, and if you get it, you have a ton of reporting to do. Thank you so much for that enthusiasm.
I mean, if you really want it, and I think their calls are quite interesting. They focus a lot on research and innovation, which I think is quite cool. So you can go for it. But just to let you know that it can be a little tricky as you go forward, and maybe the resources that you have in-house can't stand up to that. So it's just something to consider.
You're gonna get an email from that donor in a minute saying, "What the hell?" Okay. Daniel just asked, how sustainable is the current US government funding? Can NGOs plan around this? I think, Daniel, we answered that, right? I mean, the answer is no.
Yep.
US government funding, US philanthropy funding, US ESG funding, US impact investment funding, very different story. Particularly on the carbon and climate side.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I
Are we
think
done?
I think there's one more.
one more, but I could take it, although I'm not so knowledgeable about it. It's asked about the Italy's opportunity. Is it still open? I didn't look in detail which opportunities are open. You could, I guess, check their website, but if you couldn't find it, like, please email me. I will also put my email here. I can also
Not to promote this, but we're not earning any money with this anyway. But this is a typical question where grantwire.org can really help. So
yeah.
so track this, find the report in Grantwire or the opportunity, track yourself, and have Grantwire answer that sort of question. Again, we will always keep it free. The reason for Grantwire, let me take this opportunity, is that what precious grant funding there is shouldn't cost you much money or much time to find and to optimize. So Grantwire monitors over, what is it now, 3,500 sources and donors live. It updates every 3-4 hours automatically. It has direct links to the opportunity included. You can even track and ask questions around, in natural language to it. And as I think Tony said earlier, the system learns about your preferences as you use it, and then gets better and better in suggesting grant opportunities. It's basically within 6 months of using a continuous donor mapping in your inbox. So that shouldn't take this. This doesn't make grant funding more. It's actually becoming less. But my hope is that it makes the available grant funding easier to find and easier to use and answer questions like that.
Yep. I think that's all the questions. Did I miss anything?
No, I think, are we done?
I think so.
On time? Oh, that pleases the German in me, no end. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much. Everybody's still online. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you found this useful. I want to pay my massive amount of respect to all our M+M partners here that are in the call and those ones you may become in the future. Thank you so much to everybody for the work you're doing. These are really difficult times. Please change. The money is there. It's just really different. We had COVID, then we had the USAID crisis. Now we had the Iran war. The next crisis will certainly come as well, and we will see them through together as well. I have no doubts about it. Reach out to us where and if we can help. Other than that, stay healthy, take care of your fellow people, and stay happy. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Have a
Thank
good
you.
rest of the day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.